thing, and they were very heavy, if you will, no pun intended, on roads and bridges. But with the advent of particularly Chapter 152, transit, light rail, all that has been integrated in. And the Minnesota Transportation Alliance has become the centerpiece for public and private. You know, there are counties and cities that are members, engineers, as well as contractors. So it's a great meeting place of the minds. But it's not just roads and bridges anymore, as Margaret and the other speakers mentioned. And transit, whether it's light rail or commuter, is going to be very important in Washington County and your surrounding area too, as the master plan unveils. But we want you to have a chance today to talk about what you think about transportation, what you've heard as you've gone door to door and coffee parties throughout your district. So first we're going to ask you to introduce yourself. And Julie, we can start with you. Try to limit it to a minute or two, but describe your district that you're representing and now running for, and a little bit about, mention some of your towns in your district, because this is being videotaped and should show up on cable here in the next week or so.
Are we just doing a brief introduction
Yep.
and then coming back
Yep.
to our discussion?
Well,
Go ahead.
we probably should just say something about transportation.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we're trying to get done by noon, so
Yeah.
if anybody gets long-winded, we may not get back. So.
Okay, well, my name is Julie Budd, and I'm running for state senate in the newly redrawn Senate District 39. I formerly served in the Minnesota House from 456D. My new district includes a portion of my old district and then a very long district going forward. Basically, the new district runs from St. Mary's Point, south of 94, all the way up to Franconia Township, just south of Village Hall, so I believe it's 12 to 13 river towns and townships. And then inland has the larger communities like Elmo, Branson, Forest Lake, and then small Pine Springs and Schaefer in the north above US 8. About 90%, I think, other than the Hastings Bridge, pretty much everything that was discussed today in terms of specific projects resides in that District 39. So it's a hub of a lot of activity as described in the presentation today. In terms of comments on transportation, first of all, in response to Margaret's overall introduction today, we started by making a statement that more and more people support investments in transportation and maintain our transportation infrastructure. And then you referred back to our passage of Chapter 152. As you know, leading up to 152 and getting that passed was a decade or more process to make that happen. And as you correctly stated, we knew at the time of its passage that it was inadequate to meet the need that was stated at that time. My question for you, whether now or later to some other time, is what are you reading in the tea leaves that suggest that you think the public support and, more importantly, the legislative and gubernatorial support is there in the either next session or in the next 5 years to pass another major transportation funding bill? Because I'm not hearing that. Okay, so I would love to hear from you about that. Secondly, in the comments from you initially, and then more from Pastor Josephson, I wanted to say that I had in front of me as well the Minnesota County Association report on this topic, and they in their state that the gap is $50 million over a 20-year period. I believe you stated today in your summary $30 billion. So a comment on that is that from a legislative perspective, when you see parties involved in this topic closely, having numbers as different as 50 and 30 is not a good starting point for the legislative conversation. So then they really start to question all your analysis leading up to those numbers. So I would recommend highly that you get on the same page in terms of what these numbers are. And finally, and even more importantly, in terms of building up support for this initiative of further financing transportation in our state is, on the one hand, in your message, Margaret, I was hearing, we have this list of needs that are well documented both for maintenance and for preservation and expansion. And then Adam rose up and said, well, now we live in this constrained environment, so we kind of take certain kinds of money to make sure our state keeps moving both our businesses and our families to do the work of their lives and the economy, that I'm willing to step up and fight for funding these things. But we do need to have a consistent story and some really well-founded information to do that. So I thank you so much. I always learn so much when I come to these events. It's not my specialty area at all, and so I appreciate the opportunity to hear from you with this about these issues.
Well, I'm gonna just, so we don't have the same question, I'm gonna take this on really quickly. First of all, the governor has created the Transportation Finance Advisory Committee, a group of business leaders, people like Art Rolnick, who used to be with the Federal Reserve Bank, a whole group of people that have been meeting over the summer to look at transportation funding and financing. They will have a report and recommendations in December. For the legislature, we anticipate that the governor will make this an important issue for the coming legislative session that starts in January. That's certainly our goal. So that's why we think that there is growing support and momentum building for doing another transportation funding package. Secondly, in terms of the $50 billion, that was an older number that MnDOT came up with in the previous 20-year statewide multimodal plan just for state highways. That's now been revised by the Met Council and MnDOT, basically taking away a lot of the expansion that had been identified and looking at mid-pass lanes and other alternatives. And I think the third thing is that there will probably always be a little bit of a difference between the departments and advocacy groups in terms of looking at what's needed. And not that it's not needed, but they are required by law to come up with fiscally constrained plans. So that is a big difference between what we do and what the department does. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Anne Marie Metzger. I'm the DFL endorsed candidate for House Seat 53B, newly drawn district as well. It's all Woodbury. It's Woodbury east of Radio Drive and south of Bailey with a little carve out to make it all nice and even. I've lived here in Minnesota 15 years, all of them in Woodbury, so I've seen a city grow leaps and bounds. See growth, widen, see, the good work. Listening to Ted, talk about the work that's been done in Washington County is very impressive, and we appreciate our public service workers and people who put these things into place. But I'd like to go back a little bit about, before I came here to Minnesota, I grew up in the New York metropolitan area, and through my working life there, I commuted from different parts of that area, from New Jersey into New York, Connecticut into New York, Long Island into Manhattan, and all these different places. If we want to see our cities grow, if we want to see our communities grow, we need to have a good transport. And I appreciate hearing about, and knowing that, Governor Dayton wants to put something in place here that's comprehensive and deals with our future. I think like a lot of folks in this room, it's somewhat dismaying to hear, to listen to, I think the plans that we have as a state and as cities, and then know that our revenues are not matching our visions and matching what we need to get done as a state. So I look forward to hearing more about this as time goes on, and as hopefully to be your legislator. And I appreciate the time given to us today to educate us and give us a really broad outline of what it has been done here in the state, what still needs to get done. And I can tell you from talking with folks at the door, they're very interested in a responsive, transit system. Because we have different types of working families, different people at different hours. I think we need to be able to say that they have more options on the table. And this also goes for, when we're thinking about transportation projects, this is about jobs. And these are the different kinds of jobs that I know Minnesotans want, and I think this is a great way to support our communities and our families. Again, I thank you for your time today, outlining all of this, and look forward to working more with you. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Dan Shaw, and I'm running for House District 54A, which is Cottage, Grove, Newport, St. Paul Park, South St. Paul, Great Cloud Island Township. I'm a police officer and paramedic in Cottage Grove, and so transportation, to me, my number one piece is safety. I think, Adam, and maybe you can quote me on this, the date roughly, but we're looking at 8 or 9 years ago that one of the worst accidents in state history happened at Jamaica in '61, where we lost a family of 6 in a crossover accident, including children. And I responded to that accident. Those cable barriers, as far as that family is concerned, are that too many years late. We saw those projects come up across the state. They worked really well on I-94, and I don't think we can get them fast enough. And there's a lot of things with roadway safety that we can do as well. I mean, you just talk about the correction 61, you did that process where it was the asphalt and then the concrete, and it's an amazing improvement. Just the drive down Highway 61 when you make the curve. Now, we didn't do any major roadway changes other than, on grade and curve, but just when the road is safe and it's not crumbling and it's not buckling, and you make those curves, because that's an 80-mile-an-hour road. That's what people are pretty much averaging when they're driving down 61 is 75 plus miles an hour. It's big, it's smooth, and now it's that much safer. Let's just talk infrastructure and business. When we improve our bridges, we improve our roadways, all those products come from private companies, private employers. When the iron is mined up north, we provide jobs. When we haul the steel, we provide jobs. When we haul it out of the ports, we want to make sure that it comes down the roadways in a quick fashion. And when transportation works well, we fill up our industrial parks because we can get trucks in and out. And so I understand very well that this is a vital part of our economy and our safety. And you're well heard, and I appreciate the time that you took to give us this presentation. Thank you.
I'm Katie Steben. I'm the state senator right now for Senate District 57, which after redistricting will be Senate District 54. The largest cities are Cottage Grove and Hastings. And I've been in the legislature now for 10 years and have served on the Transportation Committee in both the House and Senate. And first would like to say I very much appreciate the role that the Transportation Alliance plays at the legislature, the good work that Margaret and Gary do. It really is critical for helping to shape public policy and the decisions that we make as policymakers. It's very crucial. I would just like to say that one thing that I've been talking about this election and hearing from people is the need for us to work in a bipartisan way to find solutions to problems facing Minnesota. I hear that over and over again when I'm outdoor knocking. And I think that if you look back to several years ago, in just the transportation field, one example is the East Metro Legislative or East Metro Transportation Coalition. It's a group of Commissioner White, I see is here. She was a part of that. Legislators from both sides of the aisle, mayors, Mayor Tourville was part of that. The county. It was really a group that was working together to advance transportation solutions for the East Metro area. And that's something that I think this group can continue to work on in the future. We worked on things like the need for the replacement of the Hastings Bridge, and smaller projects like what Dan talked about. Representative McNamara and I meeting with Adam Josephson multiple times to talk about the need for those median barriers to close the area just north of the Hastings Bridge. So it's large projects and also small projects that I think really can have an impact on the quality of life in the East Metro area. So there's things I'd like to touch on briefly. For the East Metro, I think it's imperative that we have a unified voice that's speaking to the needs of increased transit opportunities in our East Metro area. I think that is missing right now with some of our local leadership, whether it be the expansion of bus routes for Met Transit, as people here probably know, maybe the public also knows, because I hear about this at the doors. As Met Transit's budget has been squeezed, there's been an elimination of some East Metro bus routes that is severely impacting our ridership projections for our transit lines into the future. And I think that that's important that we have a strong voice coming out of this area now in Minnesota, many other states, I don't have the number, but many other states charge a late fee if you pay your tab fees late, your tab fees for your vehicle. If we would have a $25 per month late fee, you don't pay your vehicle tabs on time, that would generate almost $17 million a year. And it might be a solution that if you don't want to pay it, then you pay your tab fee on time. So I think we need to look outside the box and not just automatically go to some of the old things we've used in the past, to look for new ways to also try to fund some of the very real needs that we see.
Hi, I'm Susan Kent, and I am the DFL candidate for State Senate in District 53, the new District 53, which includes all of Woodbury, and the southern portions of Maplewood and Oakdale and Landfall. I want to thank everybody. This has been a tremendously informational and helpful presentation, and I know a lot went into pulling this all together, and I imagine this done 10 times, I know this has been a pretty incredible bit of work, so thank you for doing this, all of you, and thank you all for being here. To tell you a little bit about myself, my background is in marketing, and so I come to this with a strong perspective of a wide range of industries, dedicated to economic development, and seeing the real opportunities here. Quality of life, infrastructure, these are things that on many different levels can help grow our economy as we move forward. And so I'm interested in hearing this conversation and this dialogue as we sort of break these things down. And I think the more from a legislative and policy perspective that we can look at things, the difference between needs and, as we call them, needs. And then I also think there's the part that says, what's the opportunity cost? You know, if we spend $10 doing this interchange over by Fleet Farm, that's going to result in projected revenues and benefits that equal out to whatever, and help quantify that. And so that as we're looking at these, we can, you know, really make some balanced and very well-informed decisions. Because I think one of the great risks that we run in some of these things, and this has been what I've learned over years, but really reaffirmed today, is that we run the risk of some sort of penny-wise and pound-foolish sort of decision-making. And I think there's a real opportunity to make that case. And looking at Commissioner White, I'm reminded of attending a Woodbury Chamber of Commerce event where she and, I forget the gentleman's name from the county, who has been leading the Gateway Corridor project, was presenting the updated, this was a few months ago, and making the very strong economic development argument. And what I thought was so fascinating in the Woodbury Chamber of Commerce, which is not a room full of, you know, hippie liberals, woo, we all want to ride buses and trains all the time. After they finished the presentation, the very first question that came up from a very conservative banker was, how do we speed this up? How do we do this faster than what we're outlining right now? Because they recognize the power of that. So in terms of what we're hearing, that's one example. I think, you know, people's focus by and large is on jobs in the economy, but I do think there is a real case to be made for the role of short-term jobs, long-term jobs, and overall economic growth. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Joanne Ward. I'm the House candidate for Senate District 53, or Senate District 53A, the other side of Anne Marie's, and Anne Marie and I are with Susan. So we have Western Woodbury, South Maplewood, South Oakdale, and all of Landfall. I moved to Woodbury 38 years ago when the population was roughly 6,000. It was somewhere in there, moving from an unincorporated township to whatever the next step was. So there were a few county roads. There were, you know, the closest grocery store was Cottage Grove. You know, it was a very different world. So I have seen it grow. I also remember that people were very connected to what the county was doing in construction with the roads. I don't hear that now. I'm hearing the same thing at the doors that other people are. People are impacted at the very local level. What's interrupting their particular transit situation, and what is they're looking forward to using it when it's done, because they know it's going to be a huge improvement. But they don't see the big picture. And you were talking about the 4 E's, education being the first one. Is there some way that we can help? I don't know. People don't read, you know, if they're not going to take it in. But if we can do something more to educate the public about what is happening, I think they'll be a little more ready, a little more open responsibility to pay for it. I also worked as a residential real estate agent for almost 14 years in this area, including Cottage Grove, and can only reiterate the value of the quality of life. If the paths, the bike paths, the hiking paths, walking paths going by near places where people can actually use them to get someplace instead of the roadways, communities organizing to minimize the trash haulers trucks tearing up the roads, and those are local, I realize, but they're also driving on the county roads. And you know, if we've got 6 or 9 trash haulers when we could be having 1 or 2, those are the kinds of things I think people can really relate to on a daily basis. It really impacts their lives. I have background and experience, and by nature a systems thinker. So your maps and all of the colors and things like that, I'm very impressed with, and can't wait to make it happen. I'd like to be a part of that. So thank you very much for being here, for hosting this, for inviting us for an educational session. It's been very helpful.
Good morning, I'm Joanna Bears. I'm the House candidate in 54B, which covers Hastings, Acton, Manager Township, Denmark Township, part of Cottage Grove. And my transportation goes back to when I interned for Congressman James Oberstar, who was a former chair of the House, in the House for Transportation, and I learned a great deal working from him and some of the things that he did for Minnesota, especially when he helped push funding for after the 35W bridge collapsed. He really helped get a lot of funding to rebuild that new bridge because his passion was transportation. I also had lived in Ely, Minnesota, and saw some of the road work done on 169 that's been done to help with the safety of 169. And another, some of the things I've been hearing at the doors is they're very thankful for the Hastings Bridge project because we did have a terrible safety rating, and so they understand the need for improvement. Nobody wants to see what happened with 35W happen anymore or again. My big push in this election has been jobs, and I think bonding bills and capital investment projects are a big factor in creating jobs. That's the one way that government can create jobs. You push out these, transportation always needs to be, with the safety and everything, and transportation always needs to be constantly worked on because we need to make sure our roads are safe. People are driving on them every day. We need to make sure they're safe. And so transportation, or having a bonding bill to create jobs is huge because that's something that's not going to run out. We're never going to run out of work to do. And so people that are working on those bridges are actually bringing income into that community because they're, getting paid, their taxes are going to the state, they're buying lunches, they're paying for gas. And so that's a way we can, make the economy a little bit more, or spruce the economy up a little bit. So, again, I would like to thank you guys for having us here. This information was great to learn and pass on to my district.
Well, hello everybody. I'm Denny McIntyre, state representative from 57B now. It'll be 54B in the future. I live in Hastings. I represent Hastings and MnDOT Township in Dakota County, Eastern Cottage Grove, Denmark Township, the city of Afton in Washington County. I'm a former landscape contractor, been in the legislature for 5 terms in the Minnesota House. I currently chair the House Environment, Energy, Natural Resource, Finance, and Policy Committee, and I think from that committee's standpoint, a couple of really important things we did in the last session was the wetland mitigation work that we passed, the RIM money, $6 million to make sure that local road projects can move forward with that. It was something I think that the administration overlooked, but really knew that we needed to do it, so I was glad to get that included. Also, as was previously mentioned, wetland changes that we made are some common sense things that we did to make it easier for local government, the state of Minnesota, and folks to work together bit more work to do there. As you noted, Washington County has got a request for a bonding proposal to connect the small part of the bike trail that's not connected between the Southern Railroad Bridge and the Northern Railroad Bridge. We have to get across that Northern Railroad Bridge with a bike trail bridge, and I look forward to working on that in the future. And thank you for having the event today.
Hi, my name's Ron Lischheid. Anything that Dan said about the district is true because Derek and I are running in the same district, 54A, with Dan. My great-granduncle was a former state highway commissioner back in the late 30s and 40s, back when it was an elected position, and he was a DFL candidate, or a DFL commissioner, and his terms overlapped with the governor's terms. And where Harold Stassen was elected governor, he came in and said, Bill, I'd like you to resign. I want to appoint a Republican as a highway commissioner. Uncle Bill said, basically, to go somewhere. And Uncle Bill is the answer to the trivia question, who's the only state elected official that's ever been brought up on impeachment proceedings. So a little trivia there. I'm currently a member of the Motorcycle Safety Advisory Task Force, which is an advisory group that meets every other month and makes recommendations to the Commissioner of Public Safety about motorcycle issues. I'm also have been a member of the District Council Collaborative, which has worked on the Central Corridor for basically the whole life of the project, so I'm very familiar with light rail projects. I was a candidate for 2 election cycles in South Minneapolis-Richfield area, and was very much involved in the 35W Crosstown because the neighborhood I lived in was the Wyndham neighborhood, which is basically 60th and Nicollet. I also spent the last 4 election cycles as a candidate in 59B, which was the neighborhood and the site of the 35W bridge collapse, the light rail project that is currently going on through the Central Corridor through the U of M campus, and also the Lake Hiawatha through in the Cedar Riverside area. And I recognize a lot of people here. Gary, I think you interviewed when I was the state chair or state president of the Automotive Service Association when we made the decision to hire Kevin Wally as our lobbyist. So I've been around transportation issues for a long time. I'm just going to throw out a few, kind of a shopping list of things that I would like to talk about, and I would seek a seat on the Transportation Committee when I'm elected. I think it's a disgrace that 154 years into the history of Minnesota, we don't have a stable funding system for transportation. The libertarian side of me says that there's 3 basic things that state government should take care of: transportation, education, public safety. You fully fund those, and if there's money left over, we can talk about doing all the other things that we do. And I would like to see a permanent funding source so that you people don't have to come to the legislature every year with your tail between your legs, begging for money to take care of things that we already own. To me, that's a big sin. I would like to look at privatization of a lot of the things. One of the areas I think definitely needs to be looked at privatization is the rest areas. I think there's lots of opportunities there where MnDOT could reduce the expense of operating rest stops by giving the opportunity to, some of these highway rest stops could actually have gas pumps in a convenience store, and I think there are people in the private sector that would come in and take those over. And it seems like every time we have a funding problem, one of the first things we close down is we close down the state parks, we close down the rest stops, and I think that's wrong. I think that we're need to reopen the entire commercial motor vehicle inspection program. That's a program that's 30 years old. There's been a lot of changes, and I think we need to open up that can of worms and take a look at that whole inspection program again. We need to look at alternate funding sources. You've talked about one of the things I think we're going to have to look at is tax revenue based on mileage. Every year when you get your plates, you bring in your mileage, they say you have X number of miles, it's 2 cents a mile or whatever it is, and this is what you pay. But those that use the roads more should pay more. And as people start driving electric cars and alternate fuels, they're not gonna pay any money at the gas pump, so, you know, we should find a way of doing that. I'm probably the oldest person up here. I use one of these now, and hopefully won't have to after I get a hip replaced, but I have become acutely aware of a lot of ADA issues in our transportation system everywhere. Curb cuts, crosswalks, just access onto public transportation, and those kinds of things. I think one of the most frustrating things that people get is, I mean, we talk about the roads and bridges calling me, but we also have to remember that City of Minneapolis, St. Paul, Hastings, Duluth, Rochester, Mankato, those cities are all 150 years old, and everything that's below the street is 150 years old, and we have to look far enough down the road that somebody's got to say, you know, we've got, pick a number, $100 billion infrastructure maintenance project that's going to have to be funded somehow. When I was over at the University of Minnesota, TCF Stadium came in, so the first thing they did was rebuild all the streets and roads around TCF Stadium. They looked beautiful. They had no sooner pulled the barricades down, Metropolitan Council comes in, digs a huge hole, does a major sewage and drainage project there. They fill that hole in, then the light rail comes, and we tear up this new street again, and we just put in, tore up, put back together, tore up again. So I think we need to do a lot more coordinating when you're doing a road up here. You also need to think about, well, we've got sewer here, we've got utilities here, we've got all this, and so try to do all that stuff at the same time so we don't have to build roads 4 or 5 times. I think that it's also critical that we start talking about land banking for a new airport. In 1996, when the legislature made their compromise and decided to expand MSP, it was only a 20-year fix for it. And every day when a plane flies in and out of that airport, there's a great increased risk of a plane going down in Minneapolis, St. Paul, Eagan, Inver Grove Heights. And as soon as that happens, there's going to be a huge public cry that we need to get the airport out of the metropolitan. And right now we don't have any place that we can put it. So I think we need to be looking at that. We need to start planning for smart transportation systems. You know, you talked about a 50-year plan. I think that's too far out to really be, because 20 years ago nobody knew anything about GPS, nobody knew anything about smart transportation systems, laying a wire down the middle of the road, you just sit in a car. And then the final thing is transportation issue is we need to really address Pool 2 of the Mississippi River, which impacts 57 or 54A, 54B, and other areas there. That part of our river system, as I sit every night and watch the barges up and down the river, I think, well, that barge there means that we don't have another 10 trucks beating up our highway, so we need to maintain all of that. And thank you for your time.
Hey, good morning. My name is Derek Lerke. I'm running in House District 54K, and that is the western side, western half of Jamaica, or from Jamaica, Cottage Grove over, and then we cover the cities that basically up along the river and then just into South St. Paul. I'm currently a city council person now. I'm on the city council in Cottage Grove, and grew up here in the district. My wife is a county commissioner here in Washington County for the southern half of Washington County. And frankly, transportation has kind of been a really big issue for her. Not something that on the city council we have done too much to work on the transportation. But I could get into it a little bit, but frankly, you know, the folks up here that I'm speaking to right now, you guys and ladies probably know more about the transportation issues than, you know, at least probably 10 times what I know, and frankly, most of the other people up here. So what I want to talk about just for a second is the way that I will work as a legislator, because obviously I'm not an engineer, but I think that we need to move the transportation issue, roads, bridges, and then trains, all of those, we need to move it from the political shelf, if you will, and move it onto the idea of we're going to make data-driven decisions. And you see that a lot. And the problems that you run into when you don't do that is when you get stuck on, I either absolutely have to have a train, is where some people are, and then you have the other people that are absolutely, we can't have a train. You're stuck in two places. And where sometimes there is maybe even a middle of the road where you start talking about bus rapid transit and things like that. Or even if you're the person that wants the train but you won't look at other options, We need, as the senator said, we need to build our ridership. There's not enough ridership for the train in our district right now. And so if we never move towards that, you will never get the train that you absolutely want. So we need to work together. We need to make data-driven decisions. And again, in our district, a lot of talk is about the Red Rock train. And so the idea is if we have the ridership, absolutely, let's do it. But if we don't have the ridership, what else can we do to solve the problem? So instead of starting with the solution, I would start with what is the problem, now what are our solutions? And from that moves on to the budget as well. As we said right here too, this is a core function of state government, absolutely. And it should be funded right up near the top tier things. And those things should be funded and should be without discussion. If we don't do a road project or if we don't do a transit project, it should be because we don't think it should be done, not because there's not money for it. So that's the way that I would work on budgeting, is budgeting with the important things like transportation, education. Then when we start talking about things where now we're getting to the other hot button issue, which is taxes. Do we raise taxes? Do we not raise taxes? Now we're going to compare that against the least priority, the smallest thing that nobody really maybe wants. Now we're going to say, do we want to raise taxes or do we want to do this? But I don't want to say, do we want to raise taxes or do transit? Should we raise taxes or pay for schools? No, those are things that we just absolutely need to do. Again, and so that's the point. It just needs to be data-driven decisions. It needs to be done by the experts and frankly not by the politicians. Thanks.
Thank you all.